GoForThe2.com in with the Week 3 Rapid Selections. Apologize for the quick video. I put out 2 videos around 9 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday night and then realized that the sound was off. So dealing with some technical issues, I'm going to rip through these 4 games about the best bets early in the week. If you want all my synopsis and all my breakdowns, tune in this Saturday. I'll be live for 7 straight hours on Sports Grid Network, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. That's right, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, straight through 7 straight hours. I kick it off with a 2-hour pregame show. College football today. I'll give you my best picks for this coming Saturday, 12, 3:30, and 8 o'clock. Once the 12 o'clock kicks go off, in-game live for 5 straight hours. I'll be talking about the in-game wagering perspective. I'll talk about the line movement, what I see, what I don't see, and maybe we can get some winners Saturday afternoon on Sports Grid, so check it out. Just to give you an idea about the line movement and what is out there in terms of an in-game perspective. Last Saturday, if you followed the videos, went to the website, one of my better selections was North Carolina minus 23.5. However, at halftime, North Carolina was winning 7-6. That halftime line was only 6.5. North Carolina got up to around 12.5 by third quarter and then never looked back for the 31-6 victory over Syracuse. So if you couldn't catch it at game time, you got about 17 points of value at halftime. Just shows you how much the market moves in terms of this in-game wagering perspective. So check it out. Like I said, if you see value and you can't jump in at kickoff, it's always good to wait, see how these games play out in the first and second quarter, see what teams have, a solid game plan, some continuity on the offense and defensive lines, and then you could jump in. But follow all the analysis on GoForThe2.com or SportsGrid.com. SportsGrid.com, college football today, and then in-game live. Check it out this coming Saturday, September 19th, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. Let's jump into the first game that I like this coming Saturday, Tulane and Navy. Navy got blown out week 1 against BYU. I was dead wrong on that assessment. Was wrong on Tulane's assessment last week. They started slow against South Alabama, fell behind by 18 points, got going in the second half for the 27-24 victory over South Alabama. It was a dominant defensive effort in the second half of the matchup. I think this game comes down to 2 factors. Last year, Navy jumped out to a 21-0 lead. Tulane came back. They had the lead in the late third quarter before Malcolm Perry and Navy did get the 3-point victory at home. He's moved on. This offense seems a little different and non-cohesive early on. I know practice was an issue for the Navy team in terms of the COVID preparation, but I think there's something going on in terms of the overall assessment of Navy. Perry Olson transferred right after that BYU loss. He was the backup quarterback. He was a starter at one point throughout his career. Perry Olson transferred. I thought he was the better option quarterback out of him and Allen in that matchup. Came on, and BYU actually moved Navy into scoring distance, got them for the field goal in the second half of that matchup. He's no longer on the team. So is there some internal rumblings going on with Navy that we don't know about? That's my first cause of concern about this program. Very rare that you see a player transfer mid-season, especially at the quarterback position. Secondly is the fact that we know and we saw the game plan in terms of BYU and Navy. The more physical offense and defensive lines wore down the midshipmen at the point of attack, and they just could not match up with the physicality of BYU. Well, they're going to match a solid offense and defensive line in Tulane. Now, I know Tulane was walking through the motions for much of the first half. They didn't have a game under their belt. South Alabama did. But they did show continuity in the second half of their matchup against South Alabama. Keon Howard came on in the second half. He completed 14 of 30 passes, 191 yards. Also added a rushing touchdown in the second half that propelled that team to the 3-point victory. Tajay Spears came on with 105 rushing yards. And that defensive front really came on and neutralized the offensive line for South Alabama, and that's going to be the matchup for Tulane at home against a smaller zone blocking type of scheme in Navy. I think when you look at this matchup, Cameron Sample, Patrick Johnson, those defensive linemen are going to disrupt the running lanes to allow Nick Anderson, their linebacker that led the team with 8 total tackles, to fill running lanes. I think Tulane showed me something in terms of the second half. They got stronger as the game progressed. Now I feel they're in rhythm. They can run the football. They're going to force Navy to stop the run, and they're going to force Navy into long third down situations. I have the better athletes in terms of Tulane's offense and defensive lines. And more importantly, I feel I have the more athletic quarterback. Keon Howard showed a live arm in terms of making throws outside the hashes. Give me Tulane laying the 8 points at home Saturday afternoon against Navy. Other matchup comes down to two finesse teams. You have SMU on the road against North Texas. Shane Buechele stepped up 2 weeks ago, threw for over 300 yards. Reggie Roberson had a solid effort, along with Rice, the wide receiver for SMU, 5 receptions, 99 yards. They obviously, SMU, if you watch that matchup, missing Xavier Jones, missing Prochet, their leading wide receiver for last year. Obviously, it took Shane Buechele and that offense and a long time to get going in terms of cohesiveness, the wide receiver to quarterback relationship, but they were able to move the football between the 30s against Texas State. Turnovers hurt them. Now they go on the road to face North Texas. They have an extra week of preparation. North Texas really struggles when they step up in competition. I know they beat Arkansas last year, but again, that was a decimated Arkansas team, got lucky early on in the year. This is a team that matches up very well in SMU against North Texas. I think they have better athletes. I think their defense is more athletic, especially holding Texas State to 227 through the air, that week number 1. I think they'll get better in this matchup. I like SMU laying the 13.5, 14 points on the road. I think they step up, run the football, and dominate this matchup. I think it's very high scoring, though. Don't expect a low scoring affair with both of these teams. I think SMU gets into the 50s in this matchup. Another matchup taking place is UCF on the road against Georgia Tech. UCF does have 10 players out for this matchup. Defensive tackle and lineman Davis is out, along with Gowan, their big play safety and defensive back for this matchup. That's going to put pressure on this team in terms of UCF, but I still think this is a bad matchup for Georgia Tech in this ballgame. I was on Georgia Tech last week. I thought the physicality in terms of the offensive defensive line for Jeff Collins showed. I watched his press conferences. I watched his team develop. They got more physical in terms of the interior, and it showed against Florida State. They were more prepared, understood the game plan that Jeff Collins and the offense and defensive staff prepared for them. Secondary played very well. They forced James Blackman to work down the field, but that was a new offense instilled by Mike Norvell. Florida State was not used to running that offense and didn't have the personnel to run that offense effectively. I said it last week in terms of offensive assessment. Florida State averaged 140 rushing yards per game last year. That was in the bottom third of FBS. You know what they showed last week against Georgia Tech? 109 rushing yards. That's not going to get it done. Now, when you look at Georgia Tech overall, their quarterback, Jeff Sims, true freshman, stepped up, made plays. Jordan Mason ran the football hard. And this is a blue-collar team that's going to be here as a live dog early on in this matchup. But I still think from the football perspective, this is a very difficult matchup for Georgia Tech. You look at just their quarterback, Gabriel, in terms of UCF. I think they're going to dominate this matchup. They're a balanced offense that rushes for 227 yards through the air, 316 on the ground, 316 through the air for UCF. They have playmakers at the wide receiver position, 3 of 5 offensive linemen coming back, and they're going to spread out Georgia Tech, run them sideline to sideline with short to intermediate throws, and that up-tempo could wear down Georgia Tech in terms of a defensive perspective, which could lead to big plays in terms of the passing attack and rushing attack on the edge. So keep an eye out for UCF in this ball game. I think the speed is going to be a factor. They have a very opportunistic defense that's used to forcing turnovers, and they're used to their offensive game plan. They have the type of personnel to implement, even though they're on second and third stringers maybe in certain areas. They have the type of talent to make up for that type of offensive scheme. And I think that's the biggest change that they're going to see from week 1 to week 2 in terms of Georgia Tech. Playing at home, no fans, no home field. Georgia Tech played very well last week and showed me something. But this is a different animal in terms of speed that they faced in terms of the scheme. And I think that's the biggest challenge. UCF struggled last year on the road. That was a main concern. All 3 road losses last year. I think they step up, get a dominant effort, though, week number 1 for them on the road against Georgia Tech. I think if you want an assessment in terms of a type of a game this looks like, look at that matchup, Stanford versus UCF last year. UCF almost ran them out of the building. Expect the same type of effort out of UCF in this matchup, week number 1. Final game is an ACC matchup, Duke and Boston College. Duke stepped up. I gave that out from an in-game perspective. I said Duke in the first half would play very well. I looked at that matchup against Duke in Alabama. First half last year, 14-3. They stepped up from a physicality perspective and then wore down in the second half of that ball game. And that's exactly what they did against the big, physical, heavy offensive line in Notre Dame. Chase Bryce played very well, threw for 259 yards, but this was still a one-dimensional Duke offense. They only averaged 3.4 yards per carry in that loss last week. Now we're going to face another big physical team in Boston College. They're a one-dimensional offense that rushed for 225 yards on the ground. They have a new head coach in Hafley. Quarterback's going to be a concern with Gasol, and Anthony Brown has moved on now in Oregon. But I still think they can run the football. I think this will be a close game. The fact that Duke played a very physical game with the physical offense and defensive lines in Notre Dame now has to come home and play a team that hasn't played a game yet. I understand that could be affected for Boston College, but when you're talking about offense and defensive line play, I think they can wear down Duke in this matchup. They're a more athletic, faster type of defense. And I think that's the matchup. You have a speedier defense that went up against a physical offensive line in Notre Dame, now comes back home and is going to face another blue-collar team in Boston College. I've been watching in terms of practices. They've been opening up the offense a little bit more, but this is another team like Georgia Tech that has bought into the philosophy of their new head coach. I think they get to give a dominant effort. I think they win this matchup outright. So I'll be breaking this game down a little bit deeper in detail Saturday afternoon. So check me out, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, sportsgridnetwork.com.